Well, here we are again, another fun-filled episode of the Main Street and Randyland YouTube channel. Hooray! We love these episodes. I know you look forward to them each and every week. And here's the next one. We were talking last week about my very first pinball machine, the Alpine Club, made by Williams, who's right over here. So we were running really long. We had to cut the episode, but I wanted to show you just a little taste of how things evolved, since you know from the beginning of the Alpine Club. What came after that? Well, I told you 7-Up, but he's kind of hiding behind that box there. We might be able to get the cameraman later to sneak around the other side and get a picture of 7-Up. After my sister had 7-Up and I had Alpine Club, we were pretty satisfied. I mean, we weren't greedy kids. We didn't need to have, 100 pinball machines. We each had ours. We would play each other's from time to time and play together and had a good time. But you're talking the time period. You got to put everything in logical form that you understand. This was 71 that I got my Alpine Club for my birthday, and I started playing Fascination in 1974. So there was only really 3 years there in between. And once Fascination came about, we really didn't go to arcades anymore because everybody in the family was playing Fascination. It kind of took over life. We didn't go to the pool. We didn't go to the ocean. We didn't go out to dinner. Fascination, that's what you played. You played Fascination. That was summer. So here I am now playing Fascination. And I got to be friends with a couple of the kids that would come in and play Fascination that were local. And the kids were still not so thrilled with Fascination like I was. They would go to the arcades. They would want to drag me to the arcade too, but I didn't want to go. I wanted to play Fascination. So there's one young boy, my age, who I forget his name. I feel bad about that. But he used to come and we would talk and we'd go to the arcade once in a while. And he told me that there was a machine in the arcade that was just across the side street on the boardwalk next to Fascination that was broken all summer. And he said, why don't I ask the owner if he'd sell it? Because it's been sitting there broken all summer long. So I'm like, well, look, I mean, if it's broken, it's probably, if they can't fix it, there's probably something. Well, he says, ask him. He's a nice guy. The guy's name was Randy. Isn't that odd? Just worked out that way. His name was Randy Tunney. Now, I didn't know it at the time, but the Tunneys were big name in Seaside Heights. As a matter of fact, I think the bridge that goes over from Toms River into Seaside, the older bridge, is called the Tunney Bridge, who was dedicated to Mayor Tunney at the time. This was Mayor Tunney's son, Randy. He was in his, I would say, late 20s at that time, running an arcade that he had bought on the boardwalk, and they called it the Mad Hatter Arcade. Well, off to the side was a row of pinball machines, and at that time, the modern pinballs were there: Quick Draw, Soccer, Sheriff, Lawman. And here was a game called Cabaret. And this is the machine right here. You'll see it in pink. Cabaret was sitting in the arcade, dark, taped up, and that's the machine my friend was telling me about. We walked over and found Randy at the front counter and asked Randy, about the machine over there. It's been broken all summer long, is it for sale? So he said, look, it hasn't worked all summer. He says, I would sell it. He says, but I don't feel right about selling a machine that's not working, because he's had a lot of mechanics try to fix it over the summer and nobody was able to fix it. And he says the problem with the machine is not that severe, that for a home, it really wouldn't make that much difference. And he explained what the problem was, that when you played the game, the machine would reset, turn the score dials back, and it would go down to ball 1. But as soon as the machine kicked the ball up to the shooter for you to shoot your first ball, it would go to ball 2. So you would be cheated out of ball 1. And ultimately, people who would go play the machine in the arcade would come over and complain at the counter, hey, I put my dime in the pinball machine over here, and I only got 4 balls instead of 5. Yes, it was running at a dime, because the newer machines at that time were 2 for a quarter. he says he'd sell it. You know, I says, how much would you want? He says he'll take $200. Now, mind you, just a couple years before, we bought the Alpine Club for $125 because it had a broken glass. So $200 was actually a very, very good price at the time. Most arcades that were selling games were $300, $400, $500 for a machine. And Cabaret was a pretty nice machine. It was a 69. And we're talking how many years? We're talking it might have been 1974 that this was. It was only 5 years old. So I saved up my money. I bought it. So my parents had to come with the station wagon again to humor the kid. And the guys in the arcade, you know, who were bigger than me, I was still a little kid, you know, they carried the pieces out to the car. They took the legs off. They took the head off. They shoved it in the back. They put the head in there, put the legs there, gave us the bolts. He had his money. Off goes the Cabaret. Well, I'm all excited, you know, in the second seat, hanging over, looking at the Cabaret as the car is going this way. I'm looking at Cabaret because I can't wait. And we brought it back to our shore house in Lavalette on Bryn Mawr Avenue. Now, me and my father have to drag the Cabaret in the house. We don't have hand trucks or anything else like that back then. I mean, we're just regular people down at a shore house, so my poor father's having to struggle carrying the back of the machine, and I'm this little kid trying to carry the front part, get it up the steps, and you know, we get it into the living room, and it's a small summer house. So by the time we get the legs and the head on the machine, it's taking up the whole living room. I mean, that's the reality to it. So here it is. It's set up. If you sat on the couch now, you couldn't see TV anymore because the pinball machine's in the way. And here it is. So now I can't wait to start playing Cabaret. And as soon as I play it, same thing as Randy said. It would start up, it would reset, start at ball one, ball would come up, ball two. You never got to play ball one. So I played a few games on it. I'm just happy to play it. But now, after I play a few games and I'm into it an hour or so, I'm like, why is that doing that with ball one, ball two? I mean, that was going to bother me now. I mean, I loved it anyway. But it was now going to bother a challenge for me. Why is it doing that? I gotta figure this out. So off comes the glass and up comes the hood, and I'm inside the machine and trying to figure it out, and I'm probing around with my finger and testing a few things, and I got a piece of wire and I'm kind of jumping stuff out and trying to see what's going on. And I traced it down. The problem was in the head of the machine. On each one of the relays that runs a score unit, there's ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. There's 4 relays that will run all of the 4 players. This is a 4-player unit because there's a differential stepper that'll energize for the second player to send the currents from those relays, but there's 4 score relays. If you energize any one of those 4 relays by hitting a target, it has a contact on each one of the relays that would be in parallel, those of you who understand circuitry, that will engage the idle circuit. The idle circuit was a relay that would energize and lock on for the duration of that ball, telling the machine that the ball is in play. Well, one of the contacts on one of the relays for the scoring was too close. And it was touching. It shouldn't have been that close. It was touching without it being energized. But what happens is screws loosen up, contacts become loose. Instead of being squeezed down between their fibers, they loosen up a little bit. And it had a little play, and it was just laying over a little too much that it was touching the other mate of the contact, energizing the idle relay. So when the machine would start, the idle relay would be off, and it would kick the ball up without counting it. But with the idle relay energized, the machine figured, well, the ball was played, I'm counting it. So it would start at 1, kick the ball up, instantly ball 2. I had it fixed in seconds. Happy as a pig in poop. Playing my Cabaret game, back to ball 1, right on, every time, ball 1. So The next day I'm over at Fascination playing. My friend comes in and he sees the pinball's gone over at the arcade. He says, hey, the pinball's gone. Did you buy it? I told him I bought it. And he says, did you get it working? I says, yeah, as a matter of fact, I did. I fixed it already. So he ran over and he told Randy over at the Mad Hatter Arcade, oh, my friend fixed the pinball. This and the other. Well, he didn't believe it. He was... I think it bothered him, to be honest with you. I think it bothered him, meaning, not my friend, but the guy who sold it to me. So my friend says to me, he says, oh, Randy doesn't believe you fixed the machine. Come on over and talk to him. He wants to talk to you. So I went over with my friend and we talked to him and I said, yeah, I fixed it. And he's scoffing. He didn't believe it because he had other people. He had trained mechanics work on the machine. Nobody could find the problem or anything. He was like, oh yeah, what did you do to fix it? So I explained it to him. And when I explained it to him, he knew enough that he knew that I was right. So he was amazed that this young kid could find a problem that all these other mechanics couldn't find. And he was a little pissed that he sold me this machine for $200. If it was that easy to fix, he could have got $400 or $500 for the machine. Be that as it may, I was happy with it. He didn't begrudge me or anything. I could tell he's a little pissed off, but he was happy. So I was happy with my Cabaret, and that was our third machine that then ended up coming home with us after the season and adding to the basement Monopoly. So now it gave me confidence that I would look for machines that were broken to buy the machine broken, because it would be way more affordable for this kid with no money to buy a machine that would be broken, and maybe I could fix it, and getting a little more confidence with my abilities, and my abilities growing by working on other machines, I would look for other games. So Cabaret was pinball number 3. Eventually, we found another place, and we're going to talk about my friend, Sandy Markowitz. Hey, Sandy! Sandy Markowitz was working for United States Gaming over in Hillside, and he was working for the main salami over there by the name of Myron Sugarman. Now, Myron was an interesting guy. He was a connected man, and he was importing games by container loads from Europe. They were American games, but a lot of times machines were sent to Europe in test markets before they were ever released in America. So he would import container loads of games back from Europe. Sometimes he'd get used machines that were just coming out on the market in America because they were in Europe first, American machines, but there were a lot of other machines in these containers also, some older ones, some that would be broken, missing parts, whatever, and you'd get like whatever it goes, like a hodgepodge. So their warehouse was in Hillside, New Jersey, which wasn't too far from our house in Short Hills, and we stumbled across them, and they would sell old machines that would be missing a glass or broken, or they didn't think it was worth fixing it for $50. Wow, $50. Here, take it. Here, how about 2 for $150? Make deals like this with Sandy. So we would be buying some old machines. Every time there was a birthday, I want an old machine, an old broken machine. Christmas, I want an old broken machine. I didn't want toys, I want the old broken machines. Bought a lot of machines. Grand Slam. He came from United States Amusements over with Sandy Markowitz, Myron Sugarman. Gay 90s. Came from the same place. Capersville, right next door. Now that Capersville is, look at the back glass, see where it says 1 Spieler, 2 Spieler, 3 Spieler, 4 Spieler. It's an American machine that was made in German. And you see under the word Capersville, it says 4-Mann Spieler, means you can play 4 players. All the writing on the machine is in German because it was made for Germany. Capersville was a really nice game. It's a multi-ball game. Now, those who know pinball, you know that you got 1 ball. And you would play the ball. You'd finish it, kick up another ball. You got 1 ball. Multi-ball games had the ability of locking a ball, and the machine would give you another one. And you could get that ball locked, and the ball would give you another one. Then if you release them, all of a sudden you got 2 or 3 balls in play at the playfield at the same time. Was a special feature. Capersville had that feature. They sold it because it wasn't working. It was broken. I got it. I fixed it. Capersville. Next one down, Sheriff. That's a 4-player game. Now, I really liked Sheriff. I had never played a Sheriff. I had played Lawman in Randy Tunney's arcade, the Mad Hatter. It's the 2-player version. This is the 4-player version. Same game, but Lawman is Sheriff in the 4-player version, the more rare version of it. Monte Carlo also came in a few different names. One of them was a single player. One was a 2-player. Monte Carlo is a 4-player version by Bally. And down on the end, the last one is Cosmos. Another very rare game. Interesting feature, it has a ball that orbits around the globe. It's really a printed globe on the glass, and the ball just kind of goes around on a motor cam. But it was a nice feature. Cosmos, I got him. He did not have a back glass. I felt really, really bad with that. I tried to find a back glass. Eventually, I found one and put it in. It's not perfect, but better than none, that's for sure. Monte Carlo and Sheriff were really much, much better quality machines than I was used to buying. When I got those machines, it was interesting because I didn't get them for 50 bucks. Yes, they came from Sandy Markowitz, but how did that happen? Well, you know, my father would go, when it's getting to be birthday time, go buy a machine from Sandy without me there, because he'd know that I want something, and he wasn't going to spend a lot of money. And Sandy says to my dad, I'm not there, but I got the story back. He says to my dad, what are you doing with all these junk machines? My father says the kid fixes them. He's got them in the basement. They're all lined up. They're all working. Well, Sandy didn't believe it. Sandy didn't believe that, you know, this kid fixed all this junk. Mind you, they got mechanics working for them, fixing this stuff, professionals. This stuff is junk to them. So Sandy was living in Summit, which is the next town over from Short Hills. So one day, Sandy stopped over at the house. And I was thrilled to show off my collection. Come on down in the basement, Sandy. Brought him in through the garage. Sandy sees all the machines that he sold me as broken junks lined up working. Plays a few of them working beautifully. Wow. Now, Sandy was opening a new place, Stuyvesant Avenue. I think it was in Union. And he was going to call it Pinball Plus. And it was a little store, and he was going to sell reconditioned machines for home use. Sandy wanted me to work for him at the store fixing machines, reconditioning the machines. He was getting the machines from Myron. Recondition the machines, set them up, sell them for home use, and collecting, you know, good money for them. My mother didn't want me working down there. It wasn't a nice area, that she was afraid that, you know, this kid, I mean, I was young. I was 15. She didn't want, you know, me down there alone in some store working on machines. Somebody could come in and hit me over the head, whatever. So I couldn't take the job. Sandy understood. He was a really cool guy. I used to say, this guy's hip. He had a red van, and I'll never forget his red van. And he says, well, tell you what. He says, I'll bring the machines here to your house. So he would come with his van with 2 pinballs in the back of the van, drop them off. I'd work on the machines after school, fix them up, call them up, tell them the machines are ready. He'd come pick the machines up, drop off 2 more. So I was fixing machines for him. He was selling them over at Pinball Plus. He was bringing me a better end machine than I was able to buy because he's the guy on the end. So he was giving me $50 a machine for fixing the machines. Back then, that was decent money. So I was happy. I'd put in several hours on each machine, fix the machine. You know, he'd come down, pay me. Next thing you know, he brings me a machine I take a liking to. I like this machine. So I'd say to him, you know, how much, you know, would you sell me this machine for? Sandy always liked to, you know, wheel and deal a little bit. And, you know, he'd say, well, tell you what, instead of getting paid, fix the next 6 machines for me and you can keep this one. So in other words, I'm paying $300. But it wasn't really $300 to me because it was money I was just earning. It wasn't like I was, you know, laying out the cash. I was just working for it. So it worked out for him. He was saving money. Me, I was, you know, happy getting a machine. So I'm fixing 6 machines for this one, 8 machines for that one. Sheriff and Monte Carlo were 2 of those machines that I got from Sandy. Instead of me fixing them and him selling them at Pinball Plus, I fixed 8 machines and got the Sheriff. I fixed 10 machines and got the Monte Carlo. And I'm so glad I did. They're beautiful machines, and they've been with me all this time. And it worked out a nice arrangement for quite a while. And then when I got out of high school, I was 17, we moved. We moved down to Central Jersey, and that was too far for Sandy to come with machines. So our arrangement kind of ended, and we moved down there. I was out of high school, and that's when I got in business in Keensburg Amusement Park. And I started with my very first store, which was the Kentucky Derby, followed by Fascination right after. So this is an evolution that all started with the Alpine Club. That's where it started, and it worked its way up to eventually putting me into the amusement business. Over on this side, there's a couple wood rail games. I never got into the wood rails that much because they were older than even I was. These games are from the 50s. Now, two of these games are games that I played in Playland in North Lavalette on Bryn Mawr Avenue at Route 35 North. And that was a very special arcade for us kids because we lived on Bryn Mawr Avenue, and here was a little arcade right on the corner where the Shore House was. So we would go there all the time, and they had some older games from the 50s and into the 60s. And when we started playing there into the early 60s, these machines from the 50s were still there. Now, World Beauties might be a 61 as crossword, like very early 60s, but it's the same type of idea where you have your wood rail on the side and the lock bar is wood instead of the metal that would be. There's single head games, which was typical for wood rails. World Beauties was one I liked to play in Playland, so when one came up, I bought it because of the memories. But the favorite game that we used to like to play was crossword down on the end. So when one came up, I bought it from a friend of mine in Delaware, and I rode over there to pick him up, and that's a Williams game also, crossword. World Beauties is a Gottlieb. And over here, Shindig is another game that I never played when I was a kid, but one came up, and I was like, you know, I want to add a little thing because it's the same style, the same size head. It looks really nice. So that's a Gottlieb also. So I have a few wood rails. I was not big into them. Some people collect only wood rails, but I try to collect what was my memories and the connection therewith. So all these games became part of my collection because of the history there was. Another game that's in this collection right here that was not a game that I ever played in any arcade is over next to the Alpine Club. That's called Hi-Li. Pronounced H-I-L-I, but it's spelled, of course, J-A-I-A-L-A-I, Hi-Li. They play Hi-Li in Florida. It was a big game for gambling. They had them in big frontons. And I was a Hi-Li player in my early youth. I would say I was still in high school, so I was probably about 16 years old, 17 years old. I was playing Hi-Li in North Miami, and I found a pinball machine called Hi-Li. Well, of course I had to buy that. Now, the story, of course, is that the machine was made in Spain by a company called Sonic. Now, Sonic, I don't know if they were affiliated with Williams Electronics in America, which, of course, Alpine Club was made by Williams, but the Sonic used the same type of systems as the Williams, almost identical parts. They seem to have been made a little heavier because in Spain, I guess they had, cheaper labor or whatever, so the parts were a little stronger, but identical systems. So Hi-Li, to me, is the same system as a Williams made by Sonic, and I bought that because of the theming that I played Hi-Li. And I paid a lot of money for that machine because of the rarity of it. There were supposedly very, very few of those ever made. So to get any parts for it, forget about it. But I'm happy with it, and there he sits next to my first pinball machine, the Alpine Club. This little area is the early years of Randy, the games that were in my basement when I grew up as a kid. When we moved to Central Jersey, we had a rec room on the main floor off the living room, and these machines were lined up just as they are here in the rec room. On this side were rifle machines and my wild cycle driving game and things that went along with the home collection, and they were on a main floor. So I tried to keep them together into a spot where they can always stay together for the reasons of what they are. But as we walk a little further this way, we actually come to the back of my home fascination machines. These were my first fascination machines. But as an interesting segue, leaving the home games and my Alpine Club originator, I have something here I'm going to try to pull out for you. Here we have it. This is the original back glass from my Alpine Club. You see the cracked glass going across and going up? This is the glass that I bought it with and why it was sold to me so inexpensively. Many years after, I found a back glass. Somebody had destroyed an Alpine Club for other reasons, and they had the back glass, and I purchased it. And I framed the old one so I could keep it forever. Isn't that nice? Everything here connects in some way because of the memories. Everything is with memories. And these are my first two fascination tables. And because they're so special, I have to stay special with them. And sometimes I like to just climb into them and be very much as one. So I just get down and I just climb in. And I can take a little nap right inside under my fascination tables. Isn't that neat? Well, I figured you'd enjoy that. And that's where we're going to leave you. And we'll see you next time at the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Bye, guys.